Good morning, students. Welcome to Pediatrics class. I'm Dr. Trishi, Assistant Professor, Department of Pediatrics. I hope all of you are safe at home. Okay. Today's topic is, you must have understood by now, tuberculosis. So since it is a pediatric class, the stress will be more on pediatric tuberculosis. Okay. So let's begin. What is tuberculosis? Tuberculosis is a single major infectious disease causing significant morbidity, mortality among all humans, including children. So what is tuberculosis caused by? It is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, about which you have learned a lot in your micro. So it is a non-spore forming, non-motile, weakly gram-positive curved rods. Obligate anaerobe, grows best at 37 to 41 degrees centigrade, lipid-rich cell wall. So this is in brief about Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Why is it so important? So let's know about the burden and the natural history of this disease. Okay, what is TB burden? So according to Global TB Report 2018, it says that world's middle and lower income nations have most children and highest child deaths. So the leading causes for under 5 mortality are preterm, pneumonia, diarrhea, intrapartum and other significant proportions, which is termed as others. Okay. In India, it is estimated that 2.2 lakh children get TB every year, which is 22% of the global burden, of which pulmonary TB is the commonest form. Extrapulmonary TB also forms are also more in children than in adults. Okay. Most child survival strategies that have been put forth globally focus on the areas other than other. Okay. So thus childhood TB stays in a blind spot with respect to pediatrics. So this is what the Global TB Report 2018 says, that children are childhood TB is underdiagnosed. Okay. Why are we talking about pediatric tuberculosis as a different entity when compared to adult TBs? Because there are many challenges and problems in facing and managing pediatric tuberculosis. Okay, let's see what are they. Childhood tuberculosis is a formidable problem. Principles of diagnosis and treatment remain the same in child and adults, but there are a lot of dissimilarities, and the hosts bring up challenges when dealing with pediatric tuberculosis. So there is dissimilarities in the pathology, how it happens in children. Okay, just as we all know, we say that children are not miniature adults. So also TB among children is not a miniature version of adult TB. Okay, adults and older children more often have the infectious form of TB, which can be detected by testing of sputum. But whereas in children, collecting sputum is a Herculean task. Okay, and also children have forms of TB which may be more easily picked up on chest radiograph than on sputum examination. So these are the challenges. Firstly, there is dissimilarity in the pathology, and the adult version of TB is completely different from pediatric version. And also detection of TB by testing of sputum is more difficult in children, and in children it can be easily picked up by chest radiographs. Okay, there is a huge case detection gap according to the Global TB Report, which we have read in the previous slide. So what it says is there is huge detection gap in children under 5 in our subcontinent. So when we see this, so this represents the reported TB cases, then this red color represents the TB missed cases. So less than 5 years, children of belonging to the children of less than 5 years age group, in these children 69% of the TB is missed. 5 to 14 years 40%. So all other ages combined 35%. So according to this, so overall 55% of estimated children with TB are not reported to National TB program from 0 to 14. Overall, combining all these, 55%, that is more than half of the estimated children with TB are not reported to the TB national programs. So the TB control strategies are organized with adult population in mind. So because all these are missed or they are not reported, so all the TB control strategies have been formulated or chopped out, keeping the adult tuberculosis in mind. Okay, childhood TB actions does often need to retrofit into the model already set for adults. So there are few control strategies which have been chopped out for the adult. So children have to somehow fit into those models. The differences in the disease and its diagnosis among the adults and the children creates a schism. It creates a gap. So this is how pediatric TB is undetected, untreated, and undiagnosed, ultimately leading to a global burden. What is the epidemiology? The agent, as we have already read, it is Mycobacterium tuberculosis. And reservoir is the person infected with the TB patient. The bacilli in the sputum or the nasopharyngeal secretions of a TB infected patient is the reservoir. There are instances of transplacental transfer of TB to the in the pediatric in children, which is labeled as congenital TB. Mode of infection is inhalation of the droplets of the infected secretion. So when an infected person coughs, so the droplets which contain the TB bacilli, when they are inhaled, so that is the mode of infection. Entry through skin, mucous membrane, and transplacental spread have been reported, but they are very rare. So the main is inhalation of the droplets of infected secretions. Okay, what are the host factors? Age. There is no age which is exempted from tuberculosis, be it congenital, infant, pediatric, adult, anybody, no age is exempted. Also, the frequency of infection increases progressively as the child ages. Okay, malnutrition. Undernourished children are more susceptible to tuberculosis because they have depressed immunological defense mechanism in their body. Okay, when you see a malnourished child not responding to dietary therapy, then that should give you a clue that it could be tuberculosis. He could have tuberculosis. So, and you should do tuberculosis testing in the child because a malnourished child has depressed immunity. So, in depressed tuberculosis, there will be, so there are more chances of the child having tuberculosis. So, a malnourished patient who does not respond to dietary therapy should be promptly investigated for tuberculosis. Immunodeficiency. The children with immunodeficiencies, be it primary or be it secondary, are also likely to develop disseminated disease, and disseminated spreading to most of the organ systems. Intercurrent infection. So, when there is any infection which suppresses the immunity, then the tuberculosis infection will flare up. So, a quiescent tuberculosis infection may be reactivated after an attack of measles or pertussis that suppress cell-mediated immune response. Any infection that suppresses the cell-mediated immunity can reactivate a latent or a dormant tuberculosis infection in the host. Okay, environment. The risk is associated consistently with the extent of contact. So, how many hours or what is the duration of contact with the index case? Index case is the case which is having active tuberculosis. So, the extent of contact, the burden of the organism in the sputum of the infected patient, and the frequency of cough in the index case. Okay. So, these are the host factors. That is, no age is exempted. Malnourished children are more susceptible to tuberculosis. Immunodeficiencies are more likely to develop disseminated disease. Intercurrent infections that suppress the cell immune responses can cause flare-up of quiescent tuberculosis. And environment. So, as we have discussed, the extent of contact, the burden of organism in the sputum, and frequency of cough in the index case. is also associated with the risk. Okay, what is the pathophysiology? I am not going into the very minute details, just an overview, because in your pathology and microbiology you have read lots about this organism and the pathophysiology. Okay, so what, as we have read, the mode of infection is inhalation of the viable microbe. Okay, so one in lung is the most frequent portal of entry. So bacilli sets localized infection in the periphery of the lung. So 4 to 5 weeks after that, there will be tuberculin hypersensitivity, during which mild fever, malaise, weakness is developed. Then this primary focus, the rupture of the primary pulmonary focus into the pleural cavity, leading to TB pleural effusion. So the most common site is the lower segment of the middle lobe or upper segment of the lower lobe, or mid zone, because of maximum ventilation. Initially, there will be polymorphonuclear response, then macrophage and mononuclear response. They multiply intracellularly in macrophages. Cell-mediated immune response is activated in 2 to 12 weeks. Caseous necrosis occurs in the center of the lesions and reduction of bacillary multiplication. Okay. So what, the primary focus, that is the Gons focus, draining lymphatics and involved regional lymph nodes, is called as the Gons complex or the primary complex. Gons complex, Gons focus, Gons complex. This may be an important short note, or in the PG entrance examination it could be a bit. So a little stress I have laid on this particular Gons complex. So what is Gons complex? So it includes 3 components. One is the pulmonary component. One is the pulmonary component, that is the Gons focus, the lymphatic vessel component, and the lymph node component. All these 3 put together is called Gons complex. So what is the pulmonary component? It is called as the Gons focus. 1 to 2 centimeter solitary area located peripherally under a patch of pleurisy in any part of the lung, but more often in the subpleural focus in the upper part of the lower lobes. So this is the Gons focus. Gons focus. The lymphatics draining the lung lesions, draining the lung lesions containing the phagocyte containing bacilli. The lymph node, the enlarged hilar and tracheobronchial lymph nodes in the area drained by the lymph. So the lymph nodes that drain these lymphatics, okay, these lymph nodes are matted and show caseous necrosis. So the pulmonary component, which is the Gons focus, the lymphatic vessels that carry the bacilli, and the draining lymph nodes. All these 3 put together is called as Gons complex. The similar thing, Gons focus, lymphatics, and the lymph nodes. All these 3 put together is called as the Gons complex. Okay. Gons focus, lung lesions of primary TB involves upper segments of the lower lobes and lower segments of the upper lobes. Gons complex, combination of peripheral Gons focus and involved mediastinal or hilar lymph node. Microscopically, the classic lesion of TB is a caseous granuloma. So this is what is about Gons focus and Gons complex. It could be a short note. So that is why I have laid little more stress on this part. Okay, this is a tubercle. There is caseous necrosis, macrophages, foamy macrophages, lymphocytes. Okay, all these things form a tubercle. Area of necrosis surrounded by macrophages, lymphocytes, giant cells, collagen fibers, granuloma called tubercle. 70% of the primary foci is subpleural because of sluggish air currents in the lung periphery. They allow bacilli to stay long. So that is why most of them, the initial or the primary foci are usually subpleural because of the sluggish air currents in the periphery of the lung. The hallmark of primary tuberculosis infection is relatively large size of adenitis compared to relatively insignificant size of initial focus in the lung. Right focus is common because of greater volume, and right bronchus is vertical, short and wide. Okay. Increased risk of TB in young children, especially in infants. The tiniest aerosols reach the terminal airways, establish pulmonary infection, whereas the large droplets get deposited in the proximal airways and they resist infection. The course of infection depends upon the immune response of the host. Let's know about these three important terms. Okay, exposure, infection and disease. Exposure. The child has had significant contact with an adult or adolescent with infectious tuberculosis but lacks proof of infection. So the child has been exposed, has had contact but does not have any proof of infection. That is called exposure. What is an infection? Infection occurs when the individual inhales the droplets containing organisms which survives within the lung and associated lymphoid. In this, there will be signs and symptoms. Okay, disease occurs when signs and symptoms or X-ray manifestations become apparent. So this is exposure, infection, and disease. Okay, the child may have an exposure, but he may not have been infected. Sometimes the child may have infection, but that infection may not have been manifested as a disease. Okay, this is the natural history of childhood tuberculosis. So this is the source case or the index case, which is having active TB or a TB patient. Okay, from this to the is transmitted to the contacts. Out of these contacts, only 30% have infection and others do not have infection. So subsequently, no disease. So he has just, these lot have just had an exposure, but no infection and no disease. But this 30% of the patients have infection. Okay, out of these infection, now whether the child develops the disease or no depends upon the balance, the imbalance between the mycobacterial virulence and the host immunity. If the host immunity is good, then the host immunity can fight back the mycobacterial infection and it may not manifest as a disease. Okay, if the host immunity is less and the mycobacterium virulence is more, then it may manifest as primary disease. The risk of developing a disease is 5 to 10% in the lifetime, and it is more than 50% in the infants and 25% in 1 to 5 years. Okay, so primary disease, in this, the smear positive, it is infectious, it's smear negative, can also be infectious. Extrapulmonary disease is usually non-infectious. Okay, and in some, based on the imbalance between the virulence and the host immunity, it may be persistent latent infection, which can later be reactivated when the host immune response system is hampered or it is decreased by any intercurrent infection or any malnutrition. In such things, this latent infection will be reactivated later. Okay, so source to contacts, of which some do not get the infection, so no disease. Of these, 30% get infection based on the balance between the mycobacterial virulence and the host immunity. 5 to 10% may get a primary disease, and in others it remains as a latent infection which may later be reactivated. Okay, this is a natural history of childhood tuberculosis. So what are the clinical presentations? So as we know, no system, it is a multi-organ or a multi-system involvement will be there in tuberculosis. So it can present as intrathoracic TB or extrathoracic TB. Intrathoracic TB, it could be a latent TB infection, primary pulmonary infection, progressive primary disease, reactivation TB, pleural effusion, endobronchial TB. Coming to extrathoracic, it could be peripheral lymphadenopathy, which is the most common, CNS tuberculosis. Peripheral lymphadenopathy and CNS tuberculosis are the most common manifestations of extrathoracic manifestations of TB. pericardial effusion, disseminated TB, cutaneous, bone and joint, abdominal, genitourinary, perinatal disease. So it is a, by this we know that it is a multi-system involvement. Okay, what are the risk factors? The risk factors for TB infection is increased exposure. Living in increased exposure, like living in high TB endemic communities, children of families living with HIV because even in HIV there is depressed immunity, overcrowding, poor sanitation conditions, air pollution including environmental pollution, tobacco smoking. So all these, due to all of these, there is an increased exposure. Source case, so if the say the source case is cavitary disease or smear positivity, there is depends on the cough frequency, cough hygiene of the index case, delay in the treatment of the adult case, lack of contact screening, contact with source case, closeness of contact, duration of contact. All these factors determine TB infection. For TB disease, young age, 0 to 2 years, HIV infection, other immunosuppression, malnutrition, post-measles, post-viral, diabetes, we all know because all these have immunosuppressed, lack of prophylaxis, not vaccinated, all these, when if all these risk factors are present, there are more chances for developing TB disease. Okay. Coming to pulmonary disease, primary pulmonary involvement is the commonest, frequently encountered presentation in OPDs. Okay, they present with mild constitutional symptoms with mild fever, weight loss, anorexia, decreased activity, irritating dry cough due to enlarged lymph node compressing the bronchi and the trachea. Uh, at the implantation site, through lymphatics and regional lymph nodes, what we have seen is the Gons complex. Primary complex, the lesion at the primary site of involvement, draining lymphatics and inflamed regional lymph nodes. Okay, primary or the progressive pulmonary TB manifests as primary complex. Parenchymal lesion with draining lymphadenopathy, consolidation with or without cavitation, atelectasis, emphysema, unilateral hyperinflation, pleural and pericardial effusion, and miliary patterns. So radiologically, it can manifest as consolidation, atelectasis, emphysema, unilateral hyperinflation, pleural effusion, and miliary pattern. Okay. Primary infection of the Gons complex. This is the primary complex. It may progress and become a primary progressive disease, or it can be contained, which can naturally heal or be treated, or it may be reactivated. Risk much higher with natural healing as compared to those treated. Okay, this is the fate of a Gons complex. It can progress into a primary pulmonary progressive primary disease, or it can be contained, which can be treated or naturally healed, which can be reactivated further in future. Progression of primary TB to progressive primary disease. Okay, it's the same thing. Progression of Gons complex to regional lymph nodes, air involvement, partial or complete obstruction of the airways, or there may intrabronchial spread leading to bronchopneumonia, consolidation, cavitation. Gons focus it can rupture into the pleura, causing pleural effusion, or rupture into the pericardium, causing pericardial effusion or miliary TB. Or this Gons focus can cause parenchymal cavitation with intrabronchial spread. So this is the fate of primary TB. In what ways it can go? Okay, this is a simple animation it is an animation of the previous slides all put together. It will be easy for you to understand. This is, okay, Mycobacterium tuberculosis from the index case going into the lungs on inhalation, leading to Gons focus, lymphatics, hilar lymph node, Gons complex. This is called primary tuberculosis. In this, more than 90% of these heal by fibrosis, calcification, okay, in which tuberculin test may be positive, okay, and these on reactivation, can lead to secondary tuberculosis, which causes fibrocaseous cavitatory lesions. Okay, uh, later leading to local destructive disease, leading to cavity, scar, caseation, fibrosis. Okay, whereas in less than 10%, in which there are AIDS, malnutrition, or suppressed immunity, they may develop into progressive primary tuberculosis. In this progressive primary tuberculosis can lead to bacteremia, leading to miliary tuberculosis. It can go to lymph nodes, lungs, liver, spleen, adrenal, joints and bones, vertebrae, meninges, or it can take the course of progressive lung disease in the lung and then lead to bacteremia and attack other organ systems. So this is the course of tuberculosis. Primary tuberculosis, okay, reactivation secondary tuberculosis, and progressive primary tuberculosis leading to miliary tuberculosis or infecting any particular system. So I hope this slide is clear to you. It may look very busy slide, but if you follow it, it is really very easy to understand the course of infection. Okay. What is reactivation? It is a disease of adolescence and adulthood. 50 to 90% of TB cases result from reactivation of a previously dormant primary infection, which we know. There is predilection for apical or the posterior segments of the upper lobe or superior segments of the lower lobe. It usually appears as a focal or patchy heterogeneous consolidation with cavity or pleural extension. And these tuberculomas are rare. Okay, what is endobronchial TB? Now we are coming to other forms of TB. Other forms of intrathoracic TB. Fever and cough with or without sputum are the main symptoms of this endobronchial TB. In this, the patient has dyspnea, wheezing, cyanosis. Because there is wheeze, it can be misdiagnosed as asthma also. A wheezing child, less than 2 years, if there is poor response to anti-asthma medication, should give you an idea or you should suspect it could be tuberculosis. This endobronchial tuberculosis may lead to partial airway compression leading to emphysema or complete airway compression leading to collapse. Partial airway compression, when the airways are partially blocked, the air goes into the lung but it does not come out. So there is emphysema. And when is partial when there is a complete obstruction, it does not allow any air to pass. So the part of the lung which is drained by this bronchi, there will be collapse. Okay, what is miliary TB? Heavy hematogenous spread causing disease in 2 or more organs with innumerable small foci is miliary. Miliary means disseminated. It is common in infants and malnourished or immunosuppressed patients. Symptoms depend on bacillary load and organs involved. High fever, rigors, altered sensorium, meningitis, lymphadenopathy, hepatosplenomegaly are the common signs and symptoms. Smaller than 2 to 3 mm in diameter coalesce to form larger lesions. So they are small, innumerable small foci which may combine to form larger lesions. Tuberculin skin test is non-reactive in up to 40% of these patients. Okay, skipping this. This is miliary TB. Can you appreciate in this figure, in this X-ray? All these tiny, they're just like white drops. These are the innumerable foci. So this is miliary tuberculosis. This is the picture of a miliary tuberculosis. Okay, TB lymphadenitis. So most common form of extrapulmonary TB, which we have read, is peripheral lymphadenopathy. It is more children in endemic areas. The incidence is 8 to 10% of the diagnosed with TB in India. It affects a single node or a localized group of nodes, usually unilateral. The prevalence is 30 to 40% of TB. So this is TB lymph node of the neck. Okay. So what are the stages of TB lymphadenitis? Stage 1 is an enlarged, firm, mobile and discrete. That is stage 1. Stage 2 is large, rubbery and fixed because of matting. Then stage 3, central softening due to abscess formation. So initially it is mobile and then there is fixing to the adjacent lymph nodes. Then there is central softening leading to abscess formation. Then the collar stud abscess, sinus tract formation. This collar stud abscess is also very important short node. Okay. This is the primary focus. This is a solid lymph node, clinically discrete. Then this leads to, there is caseation in between. Okay. So clinically matted. So all these lymph nodes get matted and there is caseation in between. Okay. This leads to collar stud abscess. Then it ruptures to the skin. Through the skin, it ruptures and through the skin it forms a tract which is a tuberculosis tract or sinus formation. This is collar stud abscess. Can you see? This is the lymph node and this is the sinus tract, the last stage. Okay, so initially it is solitary and then discrete, caseation in between and matting with the other adjacent lymph node, forming an abscess called the collar stud abscess, then sinus tract formation. Okay. Neurotuberculosis is a more serious complication in children. It could be meningovascular, TB, meningitis, meningoencephalitis, spinal arachnoiditis, or it can be parenchymal in which there is tuberculomas or tubercular abscess. Most common form in TB meningitis in Indian children. Incidence is 1 to 4%. Most common route is, how does it reach till meninges? Lymphatics or through blood. They form caseous lesions in the cerebral cortex or meninges from early occult hematogenous spread. Rapid progression to hydrocephalus, seizures, cerebral edema, fever, headache, irritability and drowsiness. Abruptly advances. So how the child may present? The child may present with lethargy, vomiting, nuchal rigidity, seizures, hypotonia, focal neurological signs. They can be coma, decerebrate or decorticate posturing. Rapid confirmation is difficult because wide variability in CSF characteristics. Non-reactive tuberculin skin test in 40% and they may have chest X-ray normal in 50%. So what are the stages? The clinical presentation is divided into 3 stages. So what are the stages? Stage 1. In stage 1, which usually lasts for 1 to 2 weeks, there are non-specific symptoms like fever, headache, irritability, malaise, inadequate weight gain or weight loss. In infants, there may be stagnation or regression of the developed milestones. Stage 2, it begins abruptly. So you can suddenly notice the change in the child because of increased intracranial pressure and meningeal irritation, vasculitis. There may be changes in the sensorium, lethargy, nuchal rigidity, meningeal signs come up, hypotonia, vomiting, cranial nerve palsies. There may be focal neurological deficits. Okay, and then progress to a coma, hemiplegia, paraplegia, deterioration in the vital signs. So these are the stages. Initially, they may present with non-specific symptoms and suddenly, because of increased intracranial pressure, vasculitis, meningeal irritation, they may have lethargy, nuchal rigidity, vomiting, irritation, seizures, okay, and then progress to stage 3. Tuberculoma. It presents as tuberculoma. In the parenchyma of the brain, tuberculomas are formed, lesions are formed. It presents as intracranial space occupying lesions. So present manifestation depends upon the location, size and perilesional edema. Predisposes the manifestations like seizures, headache, neurological focal deficit. So in which part of the brain are the lesions? So that manifestations will be there. Okay, this is how it works with the brain. Okay, primary focus is the lung, which is got by the droplet infection, then lead to bacteremia. through lymphohematogenous spread. They can affect the meninges and the brain parenchyma, forms the rich focus similar to the Gons focus in the lungs. Then this focus ruptures into the subarachnoid space, leading to encephalitis, cerebral edema, increased intracranial pressure, vasculitis, inflammation of the vessels, into stroke, adhesions, basal cisterns. In the base of the brain, if they cause adhesions, it leads to hydrocephalus. It has an interpeduncular fossa, cranial nerve palsies, internal carotid stenosis. So this is how it acts in the brain. Okay, abdominal TB, it is less common than pulmonary neuro lymph node TB. It could be TB infection of the abdomen, including GIT, peritoneum, mesentery, abdominal lymph nodes, liver, spleen, pancreas, anything comes under abdominal TB. Intestinal TB, the main cause of 15% of all intestinal obstructions and 5 to 7% of all GI perforations. Primary involvement is rare. Abdominal TB is mostly secondary. Okay, these are some of the interesting names. Clinical forms of TB. Original Greek name for TB is phthisis. It is also called as lung sickness or consumption because there will be loss of appetite, weight loss, significant weight loss. All these things it was once called consumption. TB of the skin was called lupus vulgaris. Mesenteric disease is the TB of abdominal lymph nodes. Pott's disease is the TB of spine. Scrofula, TB of the neck lymph nodes. King's evil, also lymph node. White plague, white swelling, TB of bones. Miliary TB is disseminated TB. These are few interesting names. That's it. Nothing very important. Okay. Coming to the diagnosis. Now we have in brief learnt about, actually in detail we have learnt about the pulmonary TB, TB lymph nodes and CNS TB. In brief we have learnt about the other systems. Now let's go about to know how pediatric tuberculosis can be diagnosed. Okay. WHO has recommended an approach to diagnose TB in children. What are those? Careful history, which should include a history of TB contact, symptoms suggestive of TB, clinical examination, which include growth assessment, tuberculin skin test, bacteriological confirmation, investigations relevant for suspected pulmonary TB or extrapulmonary TB, and HIV testing. This is a recommended approach by WHO. Okay, when should you suspect the child is having a TB? Fever for 2 or more weeks, unremitting cough for 2 or more weeks, loss of weight more than equal to 5% of the weight in the past 3 months, peripheral painless swellings, cholesterol abscess, lymph nodes, all these are painless, meningitis of insidious onset, spine gibbous, and any non-specific symptoms in a contact of an infectious TB case. So, any of these are present in the child, it should ring a bell in your mind that it could be a TB case. What is it? Fever, unremitting cough of more than 2 weeks duration, weight loss of more than 5%, peripheral painless swellings, meningitis, spine gibbous, any non-specific symptoms in a patient with contact with the infectious TB case. Okay. So what do we mean by persistent fever, persistent cough, definite weight loss? We'll just have a look. Persistent means more than 2 weeks. Unexplained, more than 38 degrees centigrade reported by guardian or objectively recorded at least once. Persistent cough for more than 2 weeks. Definite weight loss is more than 5% in the past 3 months with no other apparent cause, should prompt detailed history examination and investigation. What do you mean by history of contact or exposure? In an asymptomatic child, contact with a person with any form of active TB within the last 2 years may be significant. Suppose a child walks into your OPD giving you certain symptoms which you feel that it could be a TB, you should ask about history of contact with any active TB case in the last 2 years. Okay. Exposure to an infectious TB patient, any case with laryngeal, airway or lung involvement in the past 2 years. So this is the history of, this is what you mean by contact. For the past, in the past 2 years. Okay. So as we learned, how can we diagnose? To chest radiograph, tuberculin skill testing, bacteriological testing. Okay. So chest radiograph. Why is it so important? Chest X-ray is an important tool for diagnosis of pulmonary TB in children, because we learned that microscopical examination may be difficult in child because collecting TB sputum in the child is difficult. So chest X-ray is an important tool for diagnosis of pulmonary TB in children. Also, primary childhood TB is possibacillary. Therefore, microbiological diagnosis, which is the gold standard, is less sensitive. That is why we rely more on radiological testing. Okay. The reading of sclerogram is a special skill and must taken into account because there may be inter and intra-individual variations. You have to know about the artifacts and all that. Okay. Okay. What are the radiological manifestations of TB? So certain lesions in the lung are more suggestive of TB. What are those patterns? That is hilar and mediastinal lymphadenopathy, chronic fibrocavitary disease, biliary pattern. So any of these patterns are present, they are more suggestive of TB. Okay, non-specific radiology patterns like consolidation, ground glass opacities, thin wall cavities, they are non-specific. If they have any supporting evidence like there will be history of contact or any other symptoms, then you can take these as an evidence. Otherwise, these are very non-specific. Otherwise, these are very non-specific radiological findings. Okay. When the patterns highly suggestive are hilar and mediastinal lymphadenopathy, chronic fibrocavitary disease, miliary pattern. Okay. The specificity is increased in a child with TB-like symptoms and positive skin tests. These are suggestive and not diagnostic and do not have differential diagnosis. In these cases, when there are non-specific radiology findings, microbiology is very important. Okay, if negative. Okay. What is now tuberculin skin test? This is based on delayed hypersensitivity reaction. We use 5 tuberculin units of purified protein derivative. In how it is done, 26 gauge needle and a tuberculin syringe are used. 0.1 ml of PPD is injected intradermally into the volar aspect of the forearm. A wheel of 6 mm should be raised after intradermal injection. Okay, then when should we read it? After 48 to 72 hours later, the diameter of the induration should be measured transversely to the long axis of the forearm and recorded in millimeters. So this is the forearm. This is the transverse axis. So when there is an induration like this, you should put your scale like this and measure in the transversely to the long axis of the forearm. Ballpoint or palpatory method are used to read the induration. So I will show you the pictures. Okay. This is the needle into the dermis. So you are injecting that PPD, 0.1 ml of 5 TU PPD into the, you're giving it intradermally into the dermis. Then you can see a wheel. Okay. 6 mm wheel can be noticed in the forearm. Okay. When do we read it? 72 hours later. It is read usually. Suppose if the patient misses an appointment and comes to you beyond 72 hours, up to 7 days. If it is negative, if when you are reading it, if it is negative, repeat on the other forearm. Or if it is still positive, then you can interpret as positive. If it comes beyond 7 days, you can't rely on this. Then you have to repeat the test in the other arm. Okay. This is the purified protein derivative which I was talking about. Okay. 5 tuberculin units. Okay. Of which 0.1 ml is given intradermally. Okay. And this is how we read. This is the inner circle is the induration. This is the erythema. What we read is the diameter of the induration, that too transverse to the, this is the long axis. So this is transverse. Transverse to the long axis of the forearm it is red like this. So I'll show you pictures from which you will understand better. Okay, interpretation of the tuberculin test. When do we say that this test is positive? Lesions more than 15 mm in patients with no risk factors at all is considered positive, and more than 10 in high risk groups. Indeterminate test in, so between 5 to 10 mm is called indeterminate, but this can be considered positive in cases of HIV infection, close contact with open TB case, old case of TB or healed TB. When is it considered negative? Where lesions are less than 5 mm. This is a simple interpretation. Okay. Here, can you notice there is this circle is in duration, whereas this redness around is called erythema. Okay. So we have to measure the diameter of only the induration, not the erythema. The erythema, we are not concerned about the erythema, only the induration. So when we are checking it, if there is induration, when you pass a pen from this side, so when you reach the edge of the induration, you feel a raised surface. So put a point there with a pen. And when you're coming from here, also when you reach the edge of the induration, when you're getting above it, you feel the difference. There you have to put a point. So the measure the distance between these 2 points transversely. This is how it is done. Okay. An induration of more than 5 millimeters is considered positive in these conditions. Induration of 10 or more, 15 or more, we have discussed. That is the simplest form. This is more. It is given in your books, which you can read. Okay. When you see, it appears like this above the skin. Okay. But you measure it like this. Only the diameter of the induration is taken into account. And what you should remember is transverse to the long axis of the forearm. Okay. Okay. Sometimes there may be false positives. Mantoux test, tuberculin skin test is also a very important short note. That is why I am spending more time giving you the inner and minute details also, and clinical implications also. Okay, false positive results can be there in infections due to atypical mycobacteria, BCG vaccination or infection at the site of the test. Excuse me. False negative infection results could be because of other viral, bacterial or live virus vaccinations, metabolic derangements like chronic liver failure, chronic renal failure, liver failure, diseases affecting the lymphoid organs when you're on corticosteroids, and during stress. There may be false negative results. Okay. What is microbiological confirmation? It is only the definite test for diagnosis. Conventional smear-based methods had low sensitivity, 50 to 60% in adults and adolescents. Overall, around 10% children. It has very low sensitivity because due to paucivacillary primary disease and lesser extrapulmonary TB specimens in children. Younger children not able to provide sputum sample. So poor yield and difficulty in accessing the specimen is a major deterrent in practicing microbiological confirmation for childhood TB. So one is difficulty in collecting the sputum. The other is accessing the poor yield and difficulty in accessing the specimen. These two are the major deterrents in microbiological confirmation in childhood TB. Okay. Same thing. Most children do not expectorate. Even if they have sputum, do not cough violently enough to bring it up. They tend to swallow rather than spit it out. Unlike adults, the specimen needs retrieval in children. So you need to take it out, retrieve it from there. Okay, hurdle 2 is low sensitivity of the smear because of paucibacillary nature and moderate sensitivity of CB NAT like expert and MTB culture examination in children. How? Okay, so we have read in the previous slide that we have to retrieve the sputum specimen, but how it is done? How do we access the respiratory specimen when the sputum is not brought up spontaneously? Is by gastric aspirate or gastric lavage or induced sputum. What is gastric aspirate? preferably after overnight fasting. It is done preferably after overnight fasting. So it means the hospitalization. So you will hospitalize the child and should be overnight fasting, and it needs better trained staff to retrieve it. What is induced sputum in this fasting is not necessary. The child need not be admitted. It is less invasive, can be learned easily by paramedics. Okay. Requires good infection control measures to decrease the risk of transmission to provider as it provokes coughing. Okay, what are the tests done on the respiratory specimen? That is smear for FD, ZN stain, fluorescent, RNTCP approved NAT, CB NAT, line probe assays, okay, and cultures, liquid culture, solid culture. I think you have learned a lot about these in microbiology. CB NAT, just skipping, I'm not going into the details of these. Fewer diagnostic or expert, MTB, TrueNAT, line probe assays. This is algorithm for pediatric pulmonary TB among children with no risk factors for drug resistance. Okay. Uh, when the child comes with history of persistent fever for more than or equal to 2 weeks without a known cause, or unremitting cough for more than or equal to 2 weeks, weight loss of 5% in 3 months, or no weight gain in the past 3 months, or poor weight gain despite nutritional rehabilitation in children with severe acute malnutrition with or without contact with patient with pulmonary TB in the last 2 years. In such cases, chest X-ray and skin test for TB should be done. If the chest X-ray is highly suggestive, then NAT testing is done on the respiratory specimens by expected sputum or GA or induced sputum. If NAT is positive, then it is microbiologically confirmed TB case. If the NAT is negative and skin test is positive, no other when there is no other likely alternative diagnosis, it is labeled as clinically diagnosed TB. Okay, NAT is negative, skin test is negative, refer to experts. Okay, chest X-ray has non-specific shadows, then give a course of antibiotics. The course of the antibiotics which should be used should not have any antitubercular activity. If there is persistence of the shadows and symptoms, then NAT testing is done, positive, microbiologically confirmed TB case, negative, refer to expert for persistent pneumonias. If the chest X-ray is normal and skin test is positive, evaluate for extrapulmonary TB. Chest X-ray is normal and skin test is negative, look for alternative causes. So we have to do chest X-ray and skin test. Depending on these findings, NAT is done. No, this is not necessary. We have discussed all these in the due course of the lecture. Okay, antibiotics of choice. So here we are giving them a course of antibiotics. So what antibiotics should be given? I already told you that they should not have any antibacterial, TB activity. So antibiotics of choice include amoxicillin or co-amoxiclav. Antibiotics like linezolid or any quinolone should not be used as they have anti-TB action. So antibiotics having an anti-TB action should not be used. In case antibiotic trial has already been done in adequate dose and duration, it may not be repeated. It's not necessary to repeat it. Okay. Tuberculoma we have read, so the repetition, sorry. Okay. Anti-tubercular therapy. These are the few definitions. Okay. New case. What do you mean by new case? A TB patient who has never had treatment for TB or has never taken any anti-TB drug or has taken anti-TB drugs for less than 1 month is considered as a new case. So who has never taken TB treatment or has taken TB treatment for less than 1 month is called as a new case. Among the previously treated, what is a recurrent TB case? A TB patient previously declared as successfully treated and is subsequently found to be microbiologically confirmed TB case is a recurrent TB. Treatment after failure case. Patients are those who have previously been treated for TB and whose treatment failed at the end of their most recent course of treatment. These are just definitions, you can just read through them. Okay, there's nothing to explain, they are self-explanatory. The definitions are self-explanatory. Okay. I don't want to tell this slide and confuse you. Initially, there were two categories, like the new and the old. Okay. Earlier, our guidelines of 2015. Category 2 has been withdrawn. Now it is this. So remember only this. So there is only one category. New microbiologically confirmed TB, new clinically diagnosed pulmonary TB, new microbiologically confirmed extrapulmonary TB, new clinically diagnosed extrapulmonary TB, drug sensitive previously treated TB, recurrence, treatment after loss to follow-up, treatment after failure, everything comes under only one category, the most simplified. Okay, it is 2HRZE plus 4HRE. Okay, 2 months, 4 drugs followed by 4 months, 3 drugs. Initially, it was 2 months, 4 drugs, 4 months, 2 drugs. But now ethambutol has been added. Okay, I'm not going into the details of the drugs now. Because tuberculosis is, to complete it in a single class is beyond the scope to touch each and everything. Okay. Now, what is role of intensive phase and intensive phase? 4 drugs in the intensive phase to achieve rapid killing of actively multiplying bacillary population. So, it to achieve rapid killing. Eliminate naturally occurring drug-resistant mutants to prevent the further emergence of drug-resistant mutants. Optimal minimum duration for 2 months in the new cases is essential for achieving smear conversion of 90% and above, thereby significantly reducing the infectiousness of the patient. Role of continuation phase, fewer drugs for a long period is followed in this phase. Elimination of persisters, which are responsible for relapses. The optimum duration of continuation phase is 4 months in new cases. Okay. Usage of fixed drug compositions. I'm just skipping this also. Means fixed drug. Okay, these are the pediatric drug formulation and dosages. Pediatric formulation, 3 drugs. Like these are fixed. In pediatrics, H50, R75, Z150, E100. Adult formulations are this. Age criteria expanded as pharmacokinetics are age related and not weight related. So this is according to the weight bands. These are the number of tablets you have to give. T contains all these 3. Okay, and E is a separate tablet. Okay, what is an adjunct therapy? Steroids in tuberculosis may be paradoxical worsening of symptoms due to release of, there may be sometimes paradoxical worsening of symptoms in tuberculosis because of releasing of pro-inflammatory markers like interleukins, interferons. So, in such cases, steroids have to be used. So, what are the definite indications for steroids? TB meningitis, pericarditis, Addison's disease, miliary TB with alveocapillary block, and TB uveitis. Okay. It may also be used in endobronchial TB, bronchial compression, mediastinal compression syndromes, pleurisy with severe distress, laryngeal TB, TB, iris, miliary disease with alveocapillary block. So what are the steroids used? Prednisolone 1 to 2 mg per kg per day, or Dexa 0.6 mg per kg per day, or its equivalent is used for 4 weeks and then tapered over 4 weeks. As we know that you have to always taper the steroids after using them for a long period. So the steroids are used when there is paradoxical worsening in TB meningitis, miliary TB, pericarditis. Okay, and pyridoxine supplementation. Isoniazid interferes with pyridoxine metabolism by inhibiting the formation of active form of the vitamin, leading to peripheral neuropathy. So pyridoxine supplementation. Earlier supplementation was recommended for high-risk groups only. Supplementation with 10 mg per kg is recommended to all those receiving INH therapy. Neonate born to mother with TB. Newborn should first be evaluated for the presence of disease as early as possible. As the symptoms can be subtle, good clinical examination is needed. Infant should receive INH prophylaxis at dose of 10 mg per kg per day for 6 months. Vaccination with BCG appears to decrease the risk of tuberculosis in exposed infant. So hence all children born to mothers with TB should receive BCG at birth even if they are on INH prophylaxis. Breastfeeding should be continued, but mother should have proper cough hygiene and cough etiquette. Okay. What is perinatal TB? Perinatal TB, the two main infectious routes could be transplacental route or aspiration of injection of infected amniotic fluid. Okay, when there is transplacental route, primary complex is formed in the liver with secondary hematogenous spread, an aspiration of ingestion of infected amniotic fluid leading to primary focus in the lungs or GIT. Treatment is similar to pediatric TB. Child in contact with adult with TB. Children aged less than 5 years in contact with adults with active TB may have evidence of tuberculosis infection. So more commonly associated at a younger age, severe malnutrition, absence of BCG vaccination, contact with an adult who is sputum positive. These children are more prone to have TB infection. Children below 5 years of age in contact with an adult patient with pulmonary TB should be treated with INH prophylaxis, same dose for 6 months, 10 mg per kg per day for 6 months. Okay, why do children need treatment? Infants and children less than 5 years of age are more prone to be infected. So the risk for progression to disease is very high. Risk of severe disease is inversely related to the age of the child at acquisition. Risk for development of disease later in life. Children with LTBI become adults who are reservoirs. Drug use for pediatric are relatively safe in pediatric population. That is why children need to be treated, because they turn out to be reservoirs, or there is chance of developing into a disease in the later life, and the severity of the disease is inversely related to the age. Okay. So that is why we need to give the child, any child with contact to an adult active TB and INH prophylaxis. Okay, what is drug-resistant TB? When resistance to isoniazid and rifampicin, it is called multi-drug resistant TB. It is more complicated and requires the use of second-line drugs. The duration is till 9 to 6 months if either isoniazid or rifampicin can be used, and at least 18 to 24 months if it is resistant to both isoniazid and rifampicin. Extreme, multi and extreme drug resistant TB. Extreme drug resistant TB is defined as MTB with further resistance to second line drugs. Extreme drug resistant TB can develop when these second line drugs are also misused or mismanaged and therefore also become ineffective. So when it is resistant to isoniazid or rifampicin or both, it is multi. It is drug resistant. Multi or extreme means it is resistant to isoniazid, rifampicin, and also the second line drugs. Detection of drug resistance by phage amplification assays, line probe assays. Okay, these are the second line drugs. Okay, coming to the vaccine, it was Albert Calmette and Camille Green are the pioneers for this, inventing this BCG vaccine. In India, it is produced in Chennai, in Guindy Institute. The strain used is Danish 1331 strain. It is freeze-dried liquid vaccine or liquid vaccine. It is stored at 2 to 4 degrees centigrade. Each vaccine dose has 0.1 to 0.4 million viable bacilli reconstituted with NS as distilled water is irritant. So this is very important. Unlike the other vaccines, the BCG vaccine is reconstituted with normal saline. Normal saline. Reconstituted vaccine should be used within 3 hours. This is also very important. Dose is 0.1 ml. It should be given at birth or at the time of earliest contact with the child, as early as possible. 26 gauge needle, intradermal, left upper arm at the insertion of the delta. It is a universal site. IUGR should not be a reason for delaying vaccination. 50% effective in preventing pulmonary tuberculosis in adults and children. The protective effect for disseminated and meningeal tuberculosis is 50 to 80%. Okay. 1.1 ml intradermal raises a wheal of 8 ml like the TST. Wheal gets absorbed in half an hour. You should give the caretaker instructions that they should not rub vigorously against the vaccination site. Induration develops at the injection site at 3 weeks. A lump of 6 to 10 mm at 6th week, which is not painful but tender, softens with pus formation and discharges, and it completely heals by 12 weeks with a scar of 5 to 7 mm. Okay, what are the contraindications for vaccination? Impaired immunity in leukemia, lymphoma, other malignancies, HIV, congenital immunodeficiency, immunosuppressive therapy, steroids, antimetabolites, irradiation, alkylating agents. Any viral infections, give vaccine 4 to 6 weeks later, and if the child is on steroids, postpone vaccination for 3 months. If received immunoglobulins, postpone vaccine for 3 months. Okay, World Tuberculosis Day is celebrated on 24th March. And thank you for your patient listening.